Welcome to r/nuclear revenge, where we have an actual real-life murder. Our next Reddit post is from the Zombie Lady. I'm a 36-year-old woman and my husband is 38. We have 2 kids together, both under 11. I'm originally from India and my husband is from Pakistan. I met him when I was 21. He was in India for studies. His family is influential and wealthy in Pakistan. I came from an average Brahmin family. I was Hindu, converted to Islam after my marriage with my husband. We quickly became friends after we met, and 2 years later we get married. We eventually moved to Pakistan. My husband's family has always been understanding and supportive. They even allowed me to practice my faith freely and never pressured me into anything. It was only after we had kids that I decided to convert. So 9 years ago, we decided to move to Canada. My husband has a lot of relatives here. A few months back, my brother reached out to me and basically let me know that our dad isn't in great condition. He had a heart attack, and he needed money and if I could arrange money. He said if I divorced my husband and leave my kids, they would accept me back. I told him that wasn't possible. My husband helped them and sent money without my knowledge, with a note that even though they don't accept my husband as their son-in-law, he respects my family and wishes my father a speedy recovery. Our bond deepened over time. Our marriage is literally in its best stages now. We've been doing great financially and emotionally. Our kids are very attached to my husband's side of the family. His mother visited us all the way from Pakistan in February. So now the trouble begins. My mother-in-law and I have been very close. She considers me to be her daughter. So when we were talking, she blurted out that if her daughter had been alive, she would have been my age. This was strange because I never knew that she had a daughter or that my husband had a sister. I asked her about it and she looked surprised. She asked me back if my husband had told me. I said no. Things get awkward, and then she mentions that she had a daughter who would have been my age if she was still alive. She then told me that when her daughter was 17, she had been brutally forced upon and burned alive by someone while she was returning from her school. This incident struck my husband, as he loved his sister, and he moved out for 5 days immediately without telling anyone. My mother-in-law and father-in-law were devastated and did everything to search for their son and also find out information about the perpetrator. 2 weeks after my husband returns, the police come to arrest my husband. Turns out the perpetrator had been brutally murdered. It was really brutal. His entire face was disfigured. His man parts were chopped and his hands were cut off. His heart had been carved out. Just hearing about these details sent goosebumps over my body. I literally had to adjust my position and ask her if she was being entirely honest. She told me she was. Since her daughter was burned, there was no way to get evidence to find the killer. But my husband somehow tracked down this murderer. Turns out the guy who forced himself on his sister was already a criminal and had numerous assault cases against him. He was a serial assaulter of women. My mother-in-law described this as the darkest period of her life. Her family was literally shattering at this point. She told me that her father-in-law, my husband's grandfather, was a politician and they had to spend a good amount of money and spend a lot of connections to close down this case legally. It also received media attention, so it was getting big, and reputation was on the line with my husband's life. It took 8 months to close the case, and my husband had to leave for India for education to be safe. It all somehow made sense, but I was still shell-shocked. My husband has never been the violent type. I had no idea how this happened, or why my husband hid this crucial thing from me. It's awful. The entire day, my head was spinning. I confronted him at night, and he confirmed that it happened. He wants to forget it. He explained it in a broader way. He knew about this guy because a couple of days before this incident, a similar incident took place, and my husband learned about it from the newspaper. He tried to warn his parents to allow him to escort his sister, but he was assured that it was all right. When he got to the news, he went to his friends, and all of them tracked this assaulter down. He said that his friends helped, but it was ultimately him who did the final act. He doesn't know why he did it, but the rage was too much. He told me the assaulter cried and begged, but my husband told him this is how his victims did too, but he didn't listen. So why should he? He also told me that the only reason police found out about my husband was because of the knife that he forgot to rub his fingerprint off of, and a woman saw him pulling a man to that place. Our entire talk, he was calm and collected. He didn't deflect, but was truthful to all of my questions. He even told me the justice system is screwed up everywhere, and victims don't get justice. His only regret was that he wasn't able to show his sister what he did to her assaulter. It's been 2 months since he told me this. I'm gonna be blunt, I love my husband, but knowing all this has me rethinking everything. It isn't something you get to know and be okay to accept it. It's different. My husband is a loving and humble soul. He's generous. We do charity, he also feeds homeless people once a week, and his family never ever forced anything on me. They treated me as their own. I never saw him as violent. It's as if the events that were described and my husband are two different people. My husband said that therapy tremendously helped him grow. He's also trying to get me into therapy because it came as a shock for me. I can definitely understand how finding out that your partner is a actual murderer can really make you reevaluate the relationship, but at least he's a, quote unquote benevolent murderer. He's not out there murdering for fun. He's murdering to get other murderers off the street, which, does make it better. I don't know if that makes it right. That's like a whole different debate that there isn't really a right or wrong answer to, but it's different. Our next Reddit post is from Odin the American. I was in the army, and while away on a 4-day pass, my barracks room was broken into, and a significant amount of my military equipment, helmet, backpack, weapons, web belt, ammo carrier, etc. was stolen, to the tune of approximately $800 back in 1984 dollars. For reference, Google says that's about $2,500 worth by today's money. When I returned, there were tool marks on the locked room door, and it was clearly a break-in. I notified my platoon sergeant and first sergeant, and they said to call the military police. Then, the company commander/commanding officer who outranked us called me and stated he didn't want the break-in being reported to the military police, because then our company would show up in the higher level police blotter, and this would make him, the company commander, look bad. So he told me to do a report of survey, which was a form used to reimburse for lost equipment, and I wouldn't have to pay for the stolen equipment, whose replacement costs were like a month's pay. Well, I submitted the paperwork, and without the police report, my request to be reimbursed was denied, and I was told that I would have to pay for all the stolen equipment. I was shocked because it was a lot of money, and I was just about to leave the army to go back to college. I needed that money to survive. My commanding officer told me that was a tough break, and there was nothing he could do to help me, even though it was his orders I'd followed. Well, turns out, just a week before I found out that the Army would not replace my stolen equipment, I had led our company through a nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons evaluation exercise. That was my specialty in the Army. And this spineless CEO sat out the exercise and just observed. This placed me in a leadership position to do his job, while a captain from our division HQ graded our actions. I was a junior sergeant who had to maneuver, lead, and direct the whole company of 120 men, including senior lieutenants, to a staging area 5 miles away, through the security procedures to secure the decontamination site, and then lead the cleaning of our men, tanks, and equipment from this simulated chemical attack. I'd never maneuvered an armored company before, but I did it, and the other sergeant and lieutenants in the unit were shocked that the commanding officer hadn't helped me during the exercise. The process went well, and at the end, a captain from division who was evaluating us congratulated me on doing a good job. In front of the company, this captain then explained our next steps that we would do. He made a mistake and told the troops wrong information, which in combat would have gotten them killed. I was leaving the army, but I cared enough about my fellow soldiers to want them to be combat proficient. So politely and respectfully, I corrected what the captain had said. But he clearly resented me making him look silly. I guess he was embarrassed that a lower-ranking soldier corrected him, and that made him noticeably embarrassed. At the end of our debriefing, I was walking back to my armored vehicle to radio headquarters that now we had completed our decontamination, which was required, and we were operational again, and this captain followed me away from the other soldiers. He asked me what I was going to do, and I told him that I was about to make the radio call to headquarters, and he told me that wouldn't be necessary. I could just tell him what I would say. I told him, and he told me that our unit had passed the evaluation. Luckily for me, my first sergeant overheard him say this to me. Now, fast forward to where I find out that my equipment would not be replaced. And a couple of days later, I was called into the commanding officer's office with my first sergeant, and I was told that our company had flunked the training evaluation because I hadn't made that radio call. I was getting out of the Army, so I didn't really care. But it was bad news for my commanding officer. I was shocked because the other captain, who outranked me, told me not to make the radio call that our unit was decontaminated and operational again. Turns out, that captain was immature and mad at me since I had embarrassed him in front of all the soldiers in my unit. I still was angry at the commanding officer for ordering me not to call the police about my barracks room break-in, and how he didn't care that I would now have to pay a lot of money to replace my stolen equipment. So I didn't defend myself or tell the commanding officer what really happened with the evaluation or that captain. When I left the commanding officer's office, the first sergeant told me he heard the other captain tell me not to make that radio call, but not to say anything. Our commanding officer was a jerk who would get us all killed in a war, and his unit flunking the evaluation made him look really bad, so he asked me to keep my mouth shut. A couple of weeks later, the commanding officer was rude to a sick soldier in our unit while I was out processing to leave the Army. Everyone hated him even more for this. So our supply sergeant, who was retiring from the Army, told me he couldn't believe the commanding officer had screwed me over on my stolen equipment and that he would help me. So he handed me the keys to the supply room that the commanding officer hadn't collected and told me to take whatever military equipment I would need to replace my stolen equipment, since the commanding officer would now be responsible to replace everything in the supply room with his money. The supply sergeant also answered my questions about where all the backup training logs for our unit's weapons and physical training tests were kept. We were about to be inspected by higher headquarters, and these records were super important for the commanding officer to pass the inspection, and be promoted, and not be kicked out of the Army. The day before I got out of the Army with an honorable discharge, and just a couple of days before this huge important inspection, it was discovered that the whole company's year's worth of weapons training records, the backup records, and electronic records were missing or wiped clean. The commanding officer had to explain this embarrassing situation to his bosses, who were not happy with him. His unit had already flunked the evaluation, and now his unit had failed to properly maintain training records. Even worse, his unit's training budget was completely over budget, with costs off the charts, and the division had to come up with a lot of money to cover the ammo costs to requalify the whole company on all of our weapons, plus time from other duties to redo our physical tests of running, push-ups, etc. Just as bad, advanced training would have to be canceled to redo all the basic weapons qualifications training that had to be completed once again. There was no way the commanding officer could avoid receiving a bad performance appraisal, which would end any chance of him getting promoted, thus effectively ending his military career. Meanwhile, my fellow soldiers loved it because they got another chance to shoot machine guns, throw grenades, shoot cannons, etc. My last day in the Army, at morning formation, as everyone was getting ready to do the makeup PT test, and later all day doing makeup weapon qualifications for several more days, my awesome first sergeant told me that the disappearing records was the best end-of-term service prank he'd ever seen. I, of course, replied that I didn't know what he was talking about. He laughed, winked at me, and told me I was a good soldier and that he would miss me. He then shook my hand and wished me well. Here's an interesting fact that some of you may not know. You've probably heard the term fragging used in like video games, especially FPS games, to mean killing someone. Well, the original term for fragging was, I think, the Vietnam War, when morale was famously terrible among US troops. And if there was a bad commanding officer, the troops would just literally murder their commanding officer on the field. One of the most popular ways was to just pull the pin on a fragmentation grenade and throw it into the commanding officer's tent. Hence, fragging, killing an officer with a fragmentation grenade. So the point of telling this story is don't be a bad commanding officer if any of you guys ever end up in the military, because I guess when you're in basic training, you can get away with a lot of stuff. But if you ever get called out into the field and everyone hates your guts and everyone has guns and grenades, you might just die. Our next Reddit post is from Method. Yesterday morning, I received an email notification from my credit card company stating a transaction for $1,500 at a med spa was declined, and another stating that it was approved. I immediately called that credit card company to report the fraudulent charge. Turns out, my card has had fraudulent charges over the past 3 weeks, with purchases including various hotels in my area, eBay, gas station, self-storage, and moving truck rental. I rarely use this card. The last time I used it in person was in February, and the last online purchase in 2023. Fortunately, my credit card company flagged all the recent charges and closed my card. This morning, my significant other had a doctor appointment in the same city as a hotel purchase made yesterday. After the doctor, my boyfriend asked me what I thought we should do today. I said, well, you wanted to shop for some new shoes. Or we could swing by this hotel up the street and see if the credit card thieves are still there. The amount charged seemed like it would cover 2 or 3 days. So my boyfriend and I go to the hotel to see if the people were still checked in and to let the hotel know the card was stolen and the charges would be reversed. The front desk lady was pissed. She was able to find the reservation by card number and noted that the person kept changing cards to pay for the room. Of course, they didn't tell me the room number, much to my boyfriend's dismay. My boyfriend was hoping to get a room key and take their stuff. Lol. I called the credit card company and they asked me to call the police. I called the sheriff department and they arrived within 20 minutes. I was surprised they even came. I gave them my report, ID, and credit card. The deputy asked if I wanted to prosecute. I said yes. Then they went inside and spoke to the front desk, who provided them the invoice. My boyfriend and I waited outside in front of the lobby. Then, through the automatic sliding doors, I hear the front desk lady yell, "That's him! He's trying to leave!" This light Hispanic dude with a bull terrier and several bags gets placed in cuffs. He gets brought outside, searched, and the doggo gets cuffed to a trash can. Then another little Asian guy gets brought out in cuffs. A third deputy arrives and brings out a fancy Asian lady with a face full of fillers, 2 suitcases, and a Coach backpack. 4 officers start going through the backpacks on the hood of their car. We see passports, IDs, and credit cards. The cops pull out a big credit card printing machine and a laptop from the thieves' stuff. Then they pull out a big Ziploc filled with crystal meth, and the cop exclaims, "Here we go," and turns towards us to flash a smile. 2 of them go back to search the hotel room and bring down 2 bags with more drugs, a scale, 4 car keys, and a big wad of cash. Unfortunately, none of the cars to those keys were in the parking lot, and the perp said that they had been traveling by Uber. The cops contacted one of the thief's friends to pick up the dog, who arrived pretty quickly. It was an older Asian dude with tattoos, flashy jewelry, and an old luxury SUV. Don't worry, we got his pics and license plates. All these guys seemed like characters out of The Brother's Son. The deputies then gave me all the paperwork and told me that one of the guys said they stole my card off the internet. I would have guessed that they used a scanner while I was at the fair a few weeks ago. I find that so weird because I haven't used my card online in almost a year. Apparently, they made a physical card that had a different name on it. Anywho, I walk inside to give the front desk a copy of the incident number, and then I remembered something else. I remembered seeing another transaction for a storage unit that was made yesterday and 2 charges at a rental truck company. I go back outside and talk to the sheriff and asked him if he wanted me to try to figure out where that was. I was able to track down the storage location to a city about 15 minutes away, but I had no luck with the trucks. I called the storage place, and they confirmed that a payment was made with my card, but they wouldn't give me the unit number. From there, the sheriff said that it was out of their jurisdiction and they would try to get a search warrant, but that might take a while. However, it might be helpful if I made a police report with the other city. So, with nothing better to do, I drove myself over there and made another police report regarding the storage unit. Then OP posted an update. I got a notification in the mail of the court date this week. Kinda bummed that only one of the 3 are being charged. I'm hoping to attend if I can get a babysitter for my baby. Well, clearly these thieves stole from the wrong person. That was r/nuclear revenge, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.